There were 75 seasons of college basketball at Indiana University prior to the 1975-76 campaign, many of them producing Big Ten championships, 2 seasons that ended in national titles, and a constant stream of all Big Ten and All-America performers. But the 1975-76 season produced perhaps the most unforgettable and exciting IU team in history, a team for the ages. The year began with an exhibition game against the Soviet Union national team. Before the tip-off, the usual diplomacy was displayed, with coaches and players exchanging greetings and gifts. But once they lined up for the opening tip, the Russians found Hoosier basketball less than hospitable. The Soviet team was made up for the most part of the same players who had won the Olympic gold medal in 1972. The game was played under international rules, and at halftime, the Soviets were a little bit dazed by it all. The score at the midway point was Indiana 48, USSR 42. Coach Knight emptied his bench for most of the second half. Scott May still garnered 34 points, and IU routed the Russians 94-78.
I had battled back from a broken arm all that summer, and I wasn't quite sure whether or not I had made it back to the player I once was. And I had worked extremely hard to get myself back in shape, to get my arm stronger. And that was my first real test after that injury. And coming back during that game, I don't remember what my stats were, but we had won against them convincingly, and I had played a good game. I had maybe regained my form during that contest, and it was a big thing for me.
Having disposed of the reigning world champs, the Hoosiers turned their attention to the official season opener with the UCLA Bruins, the defending NCAA champs. It was a dramatic way to open a new college campaign. The veteran Bruins, under their new head coach Gene Bartow, following the legendary John Wooden's retirement, and Hoosier fans still remembering the year before and what might have been had Scott May not broken his arm. The preseason rankings had Indiana listed number 1, and this night, a national TV audience and nearly 20,000 eyewitnesses saw why. At times, they looked like a team in mid-season form as they tore the Bruins apart. The Hoosier defense was superb, and the offense, led by May and Benson, kept UCLA at bay. The Bruin mystique seemed shattered, with the final score reading IU 84, UCLA 64.
We had a good team. We wanted to prove to everybody that the year before, my junior year, wasn't a fluke, that we were a serious ball club, and that we were a team to be reckoned with. And we went out and we showed the national television audience that we were.
The Hoosiers kept their momentum up as they ravaged the Seminoles from Florida State 83-59, and Digger Phelps' Fighting Irish with a close 63-60. On the road to Louisville's Freedom Hall, the Hoosiers faced their second biggest arch rival, the Kentucky Wildcats. To basketball fans from both states, this classic struggle has always proved to be a battle for both teams, and this game was to be no exception. IU would survive an inspired performance by Kentucky to win in overtime 77-68. The play that sent the game into the extra period was this incredible tip-in by Kent Benson. Indiana was now 4-0 and home for the second annual Indiana Classic Tournament. IU simply outclassed and outmanned Georgia's Bulldogs 93-56 in the first game of the tourney, while Virginia Tech knocked off highly touted Oregon the same night. So it appeared Bob Knight's former teammate at Ohio State, Don DeVoe, had his team primed for an upset attempt, but the Hoosiers were more than ready, and when the smoke had cleared, Indiana had bombarded the Gobblers 101-74. Champions of their own tournament for the second straight year, Bob Knight led his Hoosiers to the Big Apple, New York City, and Madison Square Garden, where they crushed Columbia and Manhattan, then held off an excellent St. John's team before the largest crowd ever to witness a college game in the Garden Festival. As the Hoosiers embarked on their Big Ten schedule, Ohio State almost pulled the upset of the year, allowing IU only a 2-point win. But their confidence grew with each successive game as they knocked off Northwestern, Michigan, Michigan State, Illinois, Purdue, Minnesota, and Iowa. With 17 wins behind them, IU rolled over Wisconsin with its largest offensive output of the season, a 114-61 trouncing that set the stage for the rematch of the season with Michigan. The Wolverines came into the game knowing they had to have a win to keep their conference race alive. Johnny Orr's club had lost twice in Big Ten play, including the loss to Indiana at Ann Arbor. The fired-up Wolverines never allowed IU to get on track, with the Hoosiers hitting just 4 of their first 20 shots. Michigan upped the lead to 10 points at the half, going to the locker room with a 39-29 advantage. Indiana's second-half comeback was ignited by Kent Benson, who scored 4 baskets in a 9-minute stretch to cut Michigan's lead to 6. Even though Benson would finish the day with 21 points and 15 rebounds, it was sophomore guard Wayne Radford who keyed IU's late surge. Radford hit 6 of 7 shots from the field, 4 of 4 from the line, and grabbed 5 rebounds. Radford's play typified the bench strength IU had shown all year.
Back to Buckner. Down to 7 seconds. On to Scott Murray. Baseline. Back out to Quinn. Jumps out in the air. Doesn't fall. Cruz tips it up. Hip up again. Good! Good! It went in! Benson tipped the ball in at the horn. And Indiana's had it. And they're going to overtime.
In the overtime, Michigan quickly jumped to a 4-point lead, but IU grimly fought back, scratching and clawing their way until Scott May ripped home a jump shot with less than a minute and a half left. For the first time in the game, Indiana led. From that point on, Kent Benson led the Hoosiers' defense and stopped everything Michigan threw at the basket, and the team that just wouldn't be beat took a commanding 3-game lead into the final 8 games of the regular season.
That's a game that, for me, we should have lost. And having won that, I think we all started to say, well, maybe it is a chance that there's some destiny here. But again, we didn't get caught up in it because playing to our potential had been the motto of the year.
When Michigan State and Illinois both fell for the second time, it brought the Hoosiers into West Lafayette and the season's second matchup with arch-rival Purdue. It wasn't a good beginning. After an early 10-4 spurt, Hoosier shooting turned stone cold, and suddenly Purdue led 27-16. To compound Hoosier problems, May and Buckner were on the bench with fouls, and Abernethy was there with an injury. But an unmistakable IU quality, bench strength, again came into play. Rich Valavicius and Wayne Radford performed admirably, but the real sparks were Bobby Wilkerson and Jimmy Wisman. After receiving encouragement from Coach Knight, the pair went to work. Wilkerson not only scored 10 points and recorded 7 assists, many of these passes to Benson, but excelled on defense as well. His thievery and shot blocking set up 2 IU scores and totally frustrated Boilermaker offensive efforts. Although Wisman saw only first half action, he put in a productive 10 minutes. He scored 4 points, passed out 2 assists, and kept the offense running smoothly. With Wilkerson and Wisman leading the charge, IU cut the Purdue halftime lead to 39-35. That was the turning point. May took command in the second half. His jumper gave IU a 43-41 lead, and this layup on a feed from Wilkerson increased the margin to 10 points. It was May's 18 second-half points and a 21-2-point edge by Hoosier reserves that paved the way for the hard-fought 74-71 final. Wins over Minnesota and Iowa followed the Purdue victory as Indiana headed north, for a game with special significance at Wisconsin. The Hoosiers arrived in Madison knowing full well that a victory would give them their 4th consecutive Big Ten championship, a feat exceeded only twice during the 71-year existence of the distinguished conference. On the bench for that clash was one proven fan of the Hoosiers, John Laskowski, the super sub who starred on 3 previous IU teams. And what a show Laz was treated to. A 96-67 victory. Fittingly, it was the IU seniors who excelled. Jimmy Cruz, Bobby Wilkerson, Tom Abernethy, Quinn Buckner, and Scott May, who showcased his All-American talents with 41 points and 18 rebounds. As the Hoosiers eased past Northwestern, it brought them back home for the season's finale. Hoosier basketball over the past 5 years had made Assembly Hall the in-place to be. During that span, over 900,000 fans witnessed IU teams in action. And in 1976, Indiana's average crowd of 16,892 was the best in the nation.
There's no question the support helped. I mean, the Indiana fans with basketball are just, they're rabid. They're so involved in the game, and it's so much fun to come out, to play those games and to feel their involvement and their concern. And you go up and down the streets, and they'll big game, you'll get them. They were very supportive, and yeah, it makes a big deal.
Assembly Hall was definitely the place to be as Indiana closed out their regular season against Ohio State. To Bob Knight, it was both a sad and joyous occasion. Pre-game ceremonies that day honored the retiring Buckeye mentor, Fred Taylor, Knight's own college coach and closest friend in the coaching fraternity. His fabled 18-year career at Ohio State produced exhilarating accomplishments that would be remembered for years to come. This was also the final home appearance for Indiana seniors Tom Abernethy, Jim Cruz, Bobby Wilkerson, Scott May, and Quinn Buckner, a group that brought joy, pride, and a sense of achievement to every corner of the entire state. And on this day, when the usual Assembly Hall sellout came to pay tribute to the Hoosiers one last time, it was indeed a grand occasion, for it would have been virtually impossible for anyone to have beaten IU in this final game. The final score, Indiana 96, Ohio State 67, and with it came a list of accomplishments that capped a truly remarkable season. The Hoosiers became the first team in Big Ten history to go unbeaten in the league 2 straight years, and only the 3rd league team in 56 years to go through the entire regular season unbeaten. And in winning their 4th consecutive Big Ten championship, the Hoosiers became conference record holders for victories in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and 4 years. The players left the playing floor one by one that March afternoon. First, Wilkerson. Then, Abernethy. Then Buckner. Kent Benson, who played half the year with an injured left wrist, was named All-Big Ten as well as All-America. Scott May, called by Knight at the time maybe the best player to ever play at Indiana, was named the Big Ten's most valuable player for the 2nd year in a row. He was a unanimous All-America pick and a consensus choice as the Player of the Year in college basketball. Coach Bob Knight, the guiding force behind the team's success, was named Coach of the Year by the Associated Press and Basketball Weekly.
One of the things that I find most interesting about that season, having gone undefeated, never felt the pressure to do any of that. And I think that was to a great deal due to the way Coach Knight handled us. He took a lot of the pressure by periodically, making the press attack him as opposed to attacking the team. And his whole focus, as long as I've never known him, and particularly while we played there, was to reach your potential, be as good as you could be. And as long as you worked to do that, there was no concern about the pressures of having to win an NCAA title, Big Ten title, or any other game.
The IU team had one elusive goal yet to fulfill, the NCAA championship. St. John's was an easy 90-70 victory in the first round. However, the NCAA Mideast Regionals in Baton Rouge, Louisiana were a different story. This championship featured top 10 ranked Indiana, Marquette, Alabama, plus highly regarded Western Michigan. 6th ranked Alabama, as quick as any team the Hoosiers had faced all year, was the first assignment. And when talking about the Crimson Tide, you had to start with the All-American Leon Douglas. The 6'10 strongman had been a demon the week before as Alabama upset 3rd ranked North Carolina, and the IU game plan was to keep Douglas away from the basket as much as possible. The tenacious Indiana defense was at its best early in the game, and with 4.5 minutes gone, Alabama was still scoreless. The Hoosiers led 9-0. Although the Crimson Tide battled on even terms throughout the remainder of the opening period, IU led by 8 at the half. The second half began much like the first half ended, the Crimson Tide keeping pace with the Hoosiers but having difficulties making up ground. It was a combination of sticky defense and unselfish team play that propelled the Hoosiers to a 54-42 lead, their largest of the game. At this point, the tide turned in favor of Bama. When Kent Benson went to the bench with his 4th foul after charging into Douglas with 13 minutes to play, the Hoosiers, thanks to their early devastating defense, were still comfortably in front. A Bobby Wilkerson bucket on a feed from Tom Abernethy once again upped the IU lead to 10 points, and from then on, it was a nip-and-tuck affair. As Alabama chopped into the lead, it remained up to the Hoosier bread-and-butter performer, Scott May, to deliver the finishing blows. First, it was a jump shot and a free throw, a big 3-point play that jumped a scary 4-point lead back out to 7. May's clutch scoring and the tenacious IU defense, which didn't yield a point in the game's last 4 minutes, sent the Hoosiers into the Mideast Regional Final against number 2 ranked Marquette. Many observers felt the Warriors had the necessary tools to upset the Hoosiers, but when Scott May ripped the corner jumper for the game's first 2 points, the Warriors found themselves up against a team that wanted to win the Mideast Regional in the worst way. The Hoosiers were controlling both ends of the floor. Defensively, the Hoosiers were pressuring the Warriors into numerous turnovers with their tight man-to-man. While on the offensive end of the floor, Benson, Buckner, and Wilkerson were on target as the Hoosiers hit their first 5 shots. The combination of efficiency, both offensively and defensively, had the Warriors both confused and frustrated. Like all good teams, the Warriors were not about to fold their tents. They fought back within 5 points and had to be smiling inside when, with just 6 minutes and 27 seconds gone in the half, May drew his 3rd foul of the game, a charging violation that sent him to the sideline. But the Hoosier bench again rose to the occasion. Coach Knight called upon Wayne Radford, and after Benson arched in a hook shot, Radford drilled a 15-footer. Indiana's concept of team play, which is every player prepared to contribute when called upon, had provided the momentum as the Hoosiers took a 36-35 lead over Marquette at halftime. Butch Lee's jumper at the start of the second half gave Marquette what would be their only lead of the game. Scott May, exiled to the bench with foul problems for most of the first half, took over from there. It was indeed an emotional experience for Coach Knight and his happy players. The victory carried special meaning to May, who was forced to miss most of the previous year's tournament action with a broken arm. Many observers believed May's injury ruined Indiana's chances for the NCAA title in 1975. But now, in '76, this team for the ages was just 2 games away from a perfect season. The NCAA Finals were held in the Spectrum in Philadelphia, and the field possessed a uniqueness all its own. For the first time, 2 unbeatens, Indiana and Rutgers, made it to the finals. And another first, 2 teams from the same conference, IU and Michigan, were among the 4 survivors. And again, there were the Bruins of UCLA, the defending national champions. As Knight and UCLA coach Gene Bartow exchanged greetings prior to the opening tip-off, thoughts raced back to the opening game of the season when the Hoosiers beat UCLA 84-64. No one expected it to be that easy this time. Though Quinn Buckner scored off the opening tip-off, it was evident the Bruins were primed for their best effort of the season. In fact, before the Hoosiers could score again on a bucket by Benson on a feed from May, the Bruins scored 7 straight points for a 7-2 lead. When the going got tough, the IU team seemed to perform at its best. Patiently, methodically, they pulled their pressuring defense even tighter, which resulted in a UCLA turnover. And even when the Bruins weren't committing damaging floor errors, they found penetrating the IU defense almost impossible, which often resulted in low percentage shots. In classic Knight style, while the defense was stifling the Bruins, the offense was asserting itself. Benson, May, Buckner, and the unheralded duo of Bobby Wilkerson and Tom Abernethy were giving the Hoosiers a balanced scoring attack. The Hoosiers crept back to tie it at 15-15, then moved ahead 21-19 with 7.5 minutes left in the half. It was a lead IU would never again relinquish. By halftime, the Hoosiers rolled to an 8-point lead, 34-26. IU fans seemed to sense that victory was in the offing, and as the 2 teams lined up to start the second period, there was an air of confidence surrounding the Hoosier squad. It wasn't arrogance, but rather the self-assured look that a team has when it knows where it is headed. With Bobby Wilkerson controlling the second half tip, the Hoosiers quickly upped their lead to 12 points. Twice, the Bruins fought back within 6, but time and time again, the fine-tuned IU attack came up with the big play that broke the UCLA dynasty. There were many heroes during the 65-51 victory, but the 2 standouts, perhaps underrated all season long, were Wilkerson and Tom Abernethy. Wilkerson turned in an incredible rebounding performance, grabbing 19 boards from his guard position while passing out 7 assists. But Abernethy, who gave IU coaches and fans a scare when he collided with UCLA's Richard Washington and came up holding his knee, was even better. Given the difficult assignment of defending the 6'11 Washington and giving up 4 inches in the process, Abernethy shackled the Bruin and held him scoreless for over 25 minutes. In addition, Abernethy scored 14 points and hauled in 6 rebounds, a one-game performance that ensured his selection to the all-tournament team. As the scoreboard clock ran out the final seconds, Knight ordered the spread-out offense, an effective IU weapon all season long. It produced the basket that gave the Hoosiers an insurmountable 10-point lead, executed perfectly as Scott May broke loose to take a pass from Jim Cruz that meant 2 points and victory. The UCLA myth was destroyed. For the second time, the Hoosiers had crushed the Bruins, and now only one game remained, the season's third battle with mighty Michigan. Electricity and excitement filled the air as the Big Red of Indiana and the Maize and Blue of Michigan took the floor for the historic meeting. The two coaches, Bobby Knight and Johnny Orr, were both enjoying the success and publicity given to the Big Ten for having two teams from the same conference battling for the national championship. And there was no question about their mutual admiration and friendship, both on and off the court. Both coaches stated flatly that the other's club was the toughest team they had faced all season, and the results of the previous battles proved positive. The excitement and thrill turned briefly to fear and anxiety in the first 3 minutes of the game when Bobby Wilkerson suffered a blow to the head that left him unconscious and dazed in a hospital. The Spider-Man's disappointment at not being able to share what was to come would be overshadowed by his magnificent 3-year contribution in helping his team get there. Momentarily shaken by the accident and fighting against what Orr later would call the best half of basketball his team could play, the Hoosiers fell behind. It wasn't that the Hoosiers were playing badly. The Wolverines were simply playing beyond all expectations. They hit 62% of their first half shots, and although Abernethy, Benson, and Buckner took turns in keeping the Hoosiers close, for Indiana fans, the best was yet to come. The Michigan fans were obviously happy, but at the same time amazed that their club, despite playing a brilliant half of basketball, was only 6 points ahead. Indiana fans, meanwhile, were apprehensive, yet the IU faithful had seen the Hoosiers down before and knew their comeback capabilities. If the Michigan partisans or any other segment of the national television audience expected the Hoosiers to play in a panic the second half, their thoughts were quickly squashed. After controlling the tip-off, the Hoosiers patiently worked the ball until they got the kind of shot they wanted, not the kind the Michigan defense would like to have dictated. And when Kent Benson scored to immediately cut into the Wolverine lead, the whole complexion of the game turned around. The Hoosiers were about to embark on perhaps their best half of basketball of the season. Scott May and Kent Benson took over the heavy scoring load in the second half, the two combining for 33 points. It was no wonder they were unanimous choices for the all-tournament team and consensus All-Americans as well.
The intangibles, I think, that made us so good that year was that we were all able to accept our roles, I think. And we were all able to, I scored a lot of points, but I really don't believe there was any criticism or any jealousy because I scored points. I think the team knew I had to score. The team knew I had to be a force in our offense, and everybody accepted that. The team knew that Wilkerson had to play the other team's best offensive player, and we all accepted that. The team knew that Buckner had to be the leader on and off the field, that there was no horsing around in the locker room. There was no horsing around at practice. It was business with us, and I think that's what separated us from the field, from everybody else.
But if May and Benson typified the Hoosier offense, it was guard Quinn Buckner who characterized the defense. His steal from Steve Grody and subsequent layup exemplified the defense that allowed Michigan only 35% shooting and 33 second-half points. Hoosier heroes were plentiful, and once again it was the Hoosier bench that deserved all the accolades that could be thrown their way. Jimmy Wisman, subbing for the injured Wilkerson, continually passed off for baskets by Benson and May. The Wolverines were gasping for breath, but the Hoosiers relentlessly marched on. Benson, who was scoring at will from the inside, began terrorizing Michigan on defense. Still, the Wolverines stayed within 4, but the play that ended their faint hopes was executed by Scott May, an underhanded follow shot. That upped the margin to 6, and the Hoosiers went on to record 10 straight points, 2 of them coming off Abernethy's drive after a pass from Buckner. Only the final seconds remained. The national championship, a 2-year quest, was in sight, and thus the perfect season became reality, and the 1976 Indiana Hoosiers became a team for the ages.
Embracing on the floor, Malavicius comes in. Scotty May jumping up and down. Look at him embrace Harold Andrews and Bobby Knight. Here comes Benson. Benson now jumping up and down. Raised hands in the air. Unbelievable. Incredible. As the Hoosier Ball Club goes wild, they know they've won the national championship.
All these people that have helped me and were really rooting for us, and I think felt a great part of this team. And I'm very grateful that we had an opportunity to play in this game tonight, and very pleased that we won it.
Basketball is a game of mistakes. I think that the team making the fewest mistakes is going to be the team that wins. I don't think that a team ever plays extremely well. I think it just makes less mistakes than another team makes. I think basketball is almost an impossible game to play well because there's so much quick change. You don't have a huddle. You don't go in for a break between innings. You don't send up pinch hitters or designated hitters, and you don't have punters and place kickers. Everybody's got to do everything in the game. They got to shoot it, dribble it, pass it, catch it, rebound it, defend against it. The skills go right through the entire team, and they're all the same, and they're all necessary. So I think that in looking at the game of basketball, you're looking at what I believe is the hardest team game by far in the world to play because of the court dimension, the size of the players, and the time involved in going quickly from one phase of it to another.